So the next topic is about the we cannot say technology. Um, it's a kind of language that we use for data interchanges. So that is called as JSON. So let us first understand the theoretical concepts behind this. Then we gradually see what are its implications and how it can be used for all the applications over the internet. And then JSON is actually the abbreviation for the JavaScript object notation, which is a data format. And this is nothing but a data format and is derived from the JavaScript programming language. Okay, so this is purely based on the JS language, JavaScript language. This makes JSON a subset of the JavaScript language, and JSON does not possess any additional features that the JavaScript language does not have. That means whatever you can do with the JavaScript, it's a part of the subset. We can say that JSON is created with. So anything that is JSON, that means it is complying with the normal JavaScript language also. So in that way, we can understand. And although JSON is a subset of the programming language, it itself is not a programming language. Okay, so JSON is not a programming language, but in fact, it is generally used for the data interchanges. Okay, so this is generally used for the data interchanges. Nowadays, whatever you find on the internet, basically we are sending the data across different machines. If you are using the HTTP protocol, then JSON has become the by default standard. So this has become by default standard nowadays. So we will come to know how it has given its priority to all the web applications, web services, mobile applications, and other things. So JSON is known as the data interchange standard, which subtextually implies that it can be used as the data format wherever the exchange of the data occurs. So generally, that means we generally use this for the exchanges of the data between two machines. A data exchange can occur between both the browser and the server, even server to server, or server to mobile, or server to Windows machine. So in that way, the interchange can be between two computer nodes. So this we have to know in the first place. So the main importance of the JSON is to actually exchange some information. So to exchange the information. Next, JSON is a lightweight text-based open standard designed for human-readable data interchange. So it is designed for human readability, like with the case of the XML. जैसे हम XML में human legibility के लिए importance देते हैं. Similarly, this is also designed for human readability, and its main purpose is to interchange the data. That means to send data from one machine to another machine. And the conventions used by the JSON are already known to the programmers, which generally you can see in these languages. So you must be knowing any of these languages: C, C++, Java, Python. Perl is not in our syllabus. So except Perl, you already know all these languages. So generally the conventions which are followed in JSON are you are already knowing. So in that way we can understand. So first of all, JSON stands for the JavaScript object notation. Then this format was specified by the Douglas Crockford. So he is like given with the credit of creating this format actually. And it was designed for human readable data interchanges, as we have discussed already. This is designed for the human readable data interchanges. So that's why it is actually following the same fundamentals. Like it should be the easy to understandable by the humans, as well as its main purpose is to data interchange. Then it has been extended from the JavaScript language. Okay. What is the file name? File name extension is anything with .json. Suppose if you are creating some login transmitting information. If you want to save that file, then you are going to write like login.json. Okay, so JSON. Login.json is your file name. So that means anything you can you want to create in the format of a JSON should be ending with this JSON only. Whether it is a caps or small, it doesn't make any difference, but it should be JSON. Then JSON internet media type is application slash JSON. So these are called as MIME types. This is for the JSON, it is application.json. For XML, application.slash XML. And for JavaScript, text slash JavaScript. CSS, text slash CSS. So in that way, some MIME types are there. So all these MIME types are recognized by the HTTP protocol. So accordingly, it can parse the information, and both sides of the machine can easily understand and do whatever the required to do on that particular file. So JSON Internet Media Type is available since 2009. So it is there since a decade, more than a decade. But in the initial days, it was not that much popular, because by that time, XML was very heavily used in the industries. So if you go back to 1 decade, in those times, XML was the most usable format for data exchanges. But by the 2009 and 10, slowly the JSON popularity began. By the year of 2013 and 15, actually JSON has took over the half of the platforms for the data exchanges, because mobile applications are have been slowly evolved. So many reasons were there. So for the popularity of the JSON. And the uniform type identifier is public.json. So the uniform type identifier, that means it's a common type identifier where you can put your files, and this is generally given with the name of public.json. Then uses of the JSON. It is used while writing JavaScript based applications that include browser extensions and websites. Okay, so whenever we are writing JavaScript based applications in the initial days, whenever we are writing the JavaScript based applications, where the JavaScript based applications are generally seen, they are generally seen in the HTML web applications or websites. Okay, so for providing to provide some client interactivity, some validation, some animation. So all these are the basic examples of usages of this JavaScript. So in the initial days, the JavaScript based applications were heavily written for the websites. So those were using the browser extensions, and some people are creating the websites. So in those times, the JSON was slowly implemented, and the JSON format is used for serializing and transmitting structured data over the connection. So what happens, suppose if you want to convey something to the server, normally if you do not have any if you want to send some normal data, suppose you want to send a name, only single name, so that is very easy to send. But whereas to save the information like an object, okay, so suppose there is a student object. The student object is having the roll number, name, email address, semester, shift, college. So many things are attached to that student object. And this student object, we want to persist. Okay, so we want to persist and send to the server or to any client machine. Okay, so that is basically called as serializing. So serialization is nothing but the object to string format, and again retrieving the object contents again from the string format. So this is called as serialization and deserialization. So this is part of every programming language nowadays. So serialization and deserialization occurs automatically in some programming languages without the major effort by the programmers. So JSON format is taken for that purpose initially. Okay, so because if you want to save something to the hard disk or to the database, or to send that information to any Windows service or web service, generally we have to serialize the data. So for serializing this data, normally the programmers were applying the JSON format so that it can be easily transmittable on the network. So this is not the only format which can be transmitted on the internet. There are so many protocols, but developers, JavaScript developers found this as a very suitable with a very suitable format, so that to easily write and read from their JavaScript programming language. Okay, because the fundamental language of the JSON is nothing but the JavaScript, so that's why it's a subpart of the JS, and thereby giving so many advantages when you are writing these JavaScript applications. Okay, so you don't have to convert a data type to another data type, or if you are implementing in another protocol, some data type conversions will be giving some kind of errors. So all those will not be there in this JSON format. So that's why the JS developers have taken the JSON format for transmitting the data on the network. Okay. So it is primarily used to transmit the data between a server and the client applications. Then web services and APIs use JSON format to provide the public data. So nowadays, APIs are everywhere. If you are using any big application like Amazon or some Facebook or any Twitter, all these are basically implemented by using the APIs only. So that's why you are able to connect from the mobile devices as well as with the websites, and otherwise you can transmit, you can create your own plugins also. So how all these can be happening only due to the implementation of the APIs. Okay. So in the 5th semester, you are going to have a complete lab on the APIs also. So how to create an API. So what are the basic methodologies to do the CRUD operations in APIs. So all this you are going to learn in the 5th semester. So for the time being, you just understand web services and APIs are the major popular applications for these JSON formats. Then it can be used with modern programming language. Nowadays, almost every programming language supports this JSON. So that's why if you are creating a JSON, then you don't have to worry about whether I have to write in this particular language only, or should I go with that language only. So those concerns you need not take care, because you are depending on a open kind of format which is cross compatible across all languages. Okay. So we have seen the general usages of the JSON, because first of all, it is generally used for the serialization of the JavaScript objects. Then basically the main purpose is to transmit the data between two computer nodes. Either it can be a server or server to server or server to client. Okay, then server to some third party service, server to some REST API. It can be anything, but we can transmit the data easily. Then we have to write the APIs and web services, but by default standard nowadays has become with this JSON. Okay, so JSON has now becoming a very good standard for creating the web services and APIs. And yes, it can be used across all the programming languages. Then typical uses of the JSON. API is the most widely used area where JSON used for data exchange. So nowadays, to have an API so that developers can consume the huge amount of data. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Flickr, whatever the major applications you see, all applications are generally created on the basis of the API. And when we are talking on the terms of the API, by default, the JSON is the standard. Okay, so this is the preferred format or standard. Nowadays, it has become. So out of these APIs, some have support for both JSON and XML, but some support only JSON. Okay, so many advantages and disadvantages are there. we will slowly understand them. What are good things when we talk about the XML, and what are best points when we go for the JSON. So we will slowly understand. But for the time being, whenever we are talking on API, that means API can transmit the data either in JSON or in XML format. The API is capable to transmit the data. Either you might be using the JSON or you are depending on the XML format. Then NoSQL. These are called as structureless databases. So this is another area where JSON is used. NoSQL databases like MongoDB, CosDB uses JSON format to store the data. We exclusively deal with the MongoDB creations, database creations, and when you do that, you are just writing the JSON format only. Whenever you are creating the MongoDB queries, that means you are nothing but using the JSON formats only. So thereby, NoSQL, wherever databases are applicable, that means again JSON is there. Not only for the API, for the NoSQL databases, we generally go for the JSON structure. Then AJAX. JSON is often used to retrieve the data from the server with AJAX. This is suitable because this way retrieved data is presented to the browser environment, and then using JavaScript can be manipulated and rendered. And how many of you actually know the importance of this AJAX? Because this comes in the web application designing. Okay, so if you don't know, I will explain. It is actually called as asynchronous JavaScript and XML. You see the X denotes for XML. Okay, so basically it was created, the AJAX functionality is created with the XML as the main backend for transmitting the data. But nowadays, again, JSON is slowly taking over to do the same functionality. And now why? So I think nobody knows. AJAX is generally implemented as part of the web application designing. The first application we can say like is used by the Google in the Gmail. So what happens generally when we create any web application, for every request, a corresponding response will be there. That means if you click any button on the browser, or you do any action on the browser, the entire page actually gets loaded in the browser again and again. If you select something, the browser will get loaded. If you click on something, the entire browser will get loaded. If you see a decade back, all the applications were AJAX-less applications. That means for every action, the browser has to send that information to the server, so that entire 100% page is getting loaded again by the browser, even for a small change. मतलब अगर आप ब्राउजर के ऊपर एक छोटा सा बटन सेलेक्ट किया है, जो सपोज मान लो आपको कंट्री सेलेक्ट करना है, कंट्री में से इंडिया सेलेक्ट किया आपने, ओके, सो इंडिया सेलेक्ट करने के बाद इंडिया के अंदर कितने स्टेट्स है वो सब एक और ड्रॉप डाउन में लोड होना चाहिए, स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम अरुणाचल प्रदेश, आंध्र प्रदेश, कर्नाटका, महाराष्ट्र. So in that way, all the states are being loaded in the drop down list. But where these all states are coming from, from the database. So that means upon selecting that India, it has to transmit the data as user selected the country India. So as user has selected the country India, then only the information has to be sent to the web server, where the database will look up for the Indian states, and accordingly the web page is going to be repopulated with those states. ये पूरा का पूरा प्रोसेस लेने के लिए सर्वर को थोड़ा टाइम लगता है, and पूरा पेज रीलोड होता है, and this is somewhat is not a nice experience for the end user. Okay, so for that, this technology is, the AJAX is a technology which actually based on JavaScript, based on JS and XML. So these two technologies in combination we have to use in the web application. Then your pages will refresh automatically without any पेज लोडिंग, पेज रीलोडिंग एज वेल एज पेज फ्लिकरिंग। अगर आप जीमेल में अगर चेक किया होंगे तो आप इंफॉर्मेशन, लेटेस्ट इंफॉर्मेशन आता है बट पेज रीलोड नहीं होता, एंड स्क्रॉलिंग पोजीशन जहाँ पे है वहीं पर आपको इंस्टेंटली नया इंफॉर्मेशन दिखता है, या जो भी नया ईमेल आया होगा या जो भी चैट आया होगा, so in the page itself automatically it pops up. So how it is able to do that? Because by the implementation of the JavaScript, Ajax. Okay, so nowadays every major application uses the JavaScript when the web application, but the first application was created by the Google, which is heavily popular. And so then characteristics of the JSON. Let us see what are the basic characteristics of the JSON. JSON is very easy to read and write, very easy when you compare with that XML. It's very easy to read and write operation. It is a lightweight text-based interchange format. Okay. JSON is a programming language independent. Then based on subset of the JavaScript programming language, this we already know. Okay. So then uses conventions that are already familiar with all these languages. Then it is supported by the most of the backend technologies. Backend means the database technologies or any database formats which you want to reside your data in a convenient format. Then JSON formats these following data types. What are they? First one is number, double precision floating point format in JS, double precision. Okay, so it's like double in C or C++ language. Then string, double quoted Unicode with backslash escaping. It's almost similar with the C and JavaScript languages. So there is no major difference between those types. Then Boolean, either you can put as true or false. Then array, an ordered sequence of values. Value, it can be a string, number, true, false, null. If you don't any particular data type for that given variable, you can simply take it as a val also. Okay. So in the JavaScript, there is a data type called as val. So this is same here, value. Then object, an ordered collection of key value pairs. This is mostly for the class-based objects that we want to serialize for the data transmissions. And white spaces can be used between any pair of tokens. Null. So these are the allowed data types in the JavaScript. Okay, either you can take numbers, you can take string, boolean, array, object. Mainly these are the things. Okay, white space, null are generally not being used that much. So they are very simplified actually when you compare with the sophisticated programming languages where you can find the double, int, big int. So those kind of implementations, and arrays will be having some hash indexes, then some lists. Okay, so different implementations are there according to the programming language. Then how it would be looking like. So the JSON syntax you can see from here. It starts with a curly brace, then comes with a property, and in that property you can assign with your data. And see this data, again this is nothing but a key pair values which are separated by comma, and again these are put in the brackets. So now understand what they are. Data is presented in name value pairs. So this is name, this is value. So these are called as name value pairs. Curly braces hold objects. So this is one object, this is second object. Okay, so this is second object, this is first object. Each name is followed by a colon. Okay, so the property, suppose there is an addition, this is the property, and which is separated with the value by putting a colon. So this is the colon. And square brackets hold arrays of values separated by comma. So this is my property which is called as book, and this book is actually an array because it is starting with a square bracket. So this square bracket is having two objects. So this is one object and the second object, and these two are separated by a comma. You can see the comma here. Okay, so square brackets hold arrays and values are separated by a comma. So this is how it would be looking like when you create any JSON syntax for your programmatic applications. And you can keep any text here because it all depends on your data, and accordingly the data type is going to be provided with the semicolon, with the quotations, or in without quotations. We will see that. So let us understand what are the differences between the XML and JSON. Okay, now we completed the XML part entirely, and XML validation, everything we have seen. JSON and XML are actually human readable formats and are actually language independent. Okay, so you take any language that is already supporting these two languages primarily. There is no language as such which is not supporting either JSON or XML, because they are open standards, and if any language it is there which is not supporting either JSON or XML, it's the language limitation. That language is not going to be getting popularity because of these limitations also. So that's how much we actually dependent on these two formats, data formats, JSON and XML. Okay, so both have the support for creation, reading and decoding capabilities in real world scenarios. We can compare JSON with XML based on the following some factors which are provided here. XML is actually more verbose. Verbose means you have to write a bit lengthier. Okay, you have to explain it a little bit more. That's why XML is more verbose than the JSON. You can see and compare. Okay, suppose I want to convey the meaning here. Company is Volkswagen. Here in a single property I have written company and this is the value. But whereas in XML I have to first of all start the tag with the company name, and I have to respectively close this end tag company, and in between only the actual value is coming. So that's why it is more verbose actually. Okay, and XML is verbose than JSON, so it is faster to write JSON for programmers, because nearly some 60 to 70% of the typing is saved by when you use this JSON format. You can see clearly more characters are available to represent the same content. यहाँ पर भी content same ही है, कोई extra कुछ भी नहीं है इसमें, ठीक है? And यहाँ पर भी the content is same, the data is same, which is also conveying the same meaning. But still, it is having some less less typing involved, or it is, we can say, somewhat optimized a little bit, not that much, but optimized at least by some 30% of typing. We can understand in that way. So that's why XML is actually verbose. Next, arrays usage. XML is used to describe the structured data which doesn't include arrays, whereas JSON include arrays. Okay, arrays को कैसे define करेंगे? ऐसा define करेंगे. This is an array. Book एक array है. Book के अंदर 2 objects है. But the same thing we cannot do simply in XML, but इसमें भी कर सकते हैं, but थोड़ा lengthier approach है. Okay, but directly arrays को एक programmatic language जैसा यूज करना है तो JSON is the preferable one. JSON is the preferable one. So arrays usage is very much easier in JSON. Parsing. JavaScript's eval method parses JSON. When applied to JSON, eval returns the described object. So JSON, actually JSON is part of the JavaScript ना, so that's why एक exclusively method भी दिया गया है JSON.parse करके. So वो जैसे ही करेंगे तो आपका ऑब्जेक्ट डायरेक्टली पार्स होता है, मतलब deserialize हो जाता है easily. It can be deserialized, it can be identified with the actual values for a given property. They can be easily identified with a given values for a given property. So that's why it is easier to go with the JSON when you want to have the proper parsing, faster parsing, as well as arrays implementation in your programmatic implementation. Okay, so this is a basic comparison, and now we will see some benefits of the XML JSON over the XML. JSON supports data types like string, integer, boolean, etc., while XML data is typeless, because when I write something here, it is a string because it is PC data. It is also a string, but this is also a string. 8 lakhs is also a string because it's PC data. Okay. Some advanced programmatic implementations are also there, XSLT, by using some fundamental peripheral technologies of the XML. We can do the better programming also. उसमें भी data types है, integer है, वो सब है. But basically XML वो support नहीं करता. XML actually typeless है. Okay. जब XML डिजाइन करेंगे तो आप उसके अंदर डेटा टाइप प्रोवाइड नहीं करेंगे. You create simply a structure because XML is meant for structured document designing. So that's why it is typeless. XML data is typeless. But whereas you can see JSON is supporting already string, integer, boolean. Why? Because it is a sub part of the JavaScript, and JavaScript already supporting all these things. So that's why JSON is also by default supporting these data types. So in XML, all the data is in strings and parsed at runtime. JSON is native data format for JavaScript, and therefore it is faster for the browser to read and understand. ये भी हमने बार बार पढ़े हैं, because normally वेबसाइट अगर आप बनाते हैं तो CSS JavaScript के बिना बनाना थोड़ा डिफिकल्ट रहता है. So whenever we are having the JavaScript in our website, that means there is a native support for this JSON. So thereby creating the reading and writing operations will be much faster when you go for the JSON. Okay. Then as JSON contains no tags but data, and therefore less data to be transferred between client and server, so it's lighter than the XML. Lighter than the XML means lighter in the sense थोड़ा ज्यादा टाइम लेता है कंटेंट को पार्स करने के लिए, क्योंकि इसमें कैरेक्टर ज्यादा है. सपोज मैं अभी काउंट नहीं कर सकता. सपोज हियर द कैरेक्टर्स आर 100, यहाँ पे कैरेक्टर्स मे बी 70 है. सो एटलीस्ट ए फ्रैक्शन ऑफ सेकेंड इट इज मच फास्टर देन दिस. अगर यही बात बड़े बड़े डॉक्यूमेंट्स की अगर बात करेंगे, सपोज यू आर गोइंग टू लिस्ट आउट सम 100 products, the data of the 100 products for your application, you may be sending 20,000 characters in a single shot, whereas that whole information is written down in less than 8,000 characters. ऐसा इतना डिफरेंस पड़ता है. इसमें अगर 20,000 कैरेक्टर्स के थ्रू सेम डेटा सेंड कर रहे होंगे तो जेसन के थ्रू 8 to 9,000 के रेशियो में आपका वर्क खत्म हो जाता है. सो दैट्स हाउ मच it is actually optimizing the data. So thereby it is lighter also. Lighter in the sense faster है, lighter ही है. Okay, it is lighter and faster. Then less syntax, no semantics. एक disadvantage भी है इसमें semantics clear नहीं रहता. इसमें semantics in the sense structure भी actually XML जितना structure wise इसको हम implement करना है तो थोड़ा difficult रहता है. But semantics भी प्रोग्रामर के ऊपर है कितना क्लियरली वो दे सकता है. That is applicable both for the JSON and XML because they are meant for human legible formats. अगर प्रोग्रामर अगर नहीं देना चाहता ऐसा, तो it will be having less semantics in understanding. Properties are immediately accessible to JavaScript code. Using XML, we have to fetch an XML document, use the XML DOM to loop through the document. पहले इसका प्रैक्टिकल भी होता था, अभी नहीं है आपके इसमें. DOM के थ्रू कैसे लूपिंग करेंगे. Extract the values and store in variables. So 3 steps are getting implemented for parsing the data when it is coming from the XML. But whereas in the JSON, first of all fetch the JSON string from the network, call this JSON.parse, that's all. So it's very easier. इसमें क्या है कि एडिशनल स्टेप है, XML DOM के थ्रू आपको लूप करना पड़ता है एंटायर डॉक्यूमेंट को. देन यू हैव टू फाइंड आउट द रिलेवेंट एलिमेंट. सपोज मुझे प्राइस फाइंड आउट करना है. ओके, सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल मुझे प्राइस फाइंड आउट करना है तो आई हैव टू लुक अप दिस कार एलिमेंट. पहले कार को सर्च करूंगा, कार के अंदर ही प्राइस है ना. सो कार के अंदर मुझे अगेन प्राइस को सर्च करूंगा बाय प्रोवाइडिंग द लूप्स. Then only this particular value will be visible and it will be extracted and stored in the variable so that to do whatever the further necessary action. उसको डेटाबेस में सेव करना है या एप्लीकेशन को हैंड ओवर करना है, that is up to the programming. Okay, but इसमें 2 steps में खत्म हो जाता है. Fetch the JSON string from the network and call this method JSON.parse. That's all. Your parsing is done. So that's why somewhat beneficial when you compare with the XML. XML के बेसिस पे अगर इसको कंपेयर करेंगे तो थोड़ा फास्टर है, लाइटर है, एंड डेटा टाइप सपोर्ट करता है ऑलरेडी, सो इट्स मच इजियर फॉर द प्रोग्रामर्स. बट इसका शॉर्टकमिंग्स भी है, लिमिटेशंस भी है. लैक ऑफ नेम स्पेसेस. Before going for the XSLT, you have to first of all learn the things from the namespace, then only you can write the XSLT documents. ऐसा काफी सारे dependencies हैं. So namespaces are very powerful feature which is available in XML, but whereas JSON में वो नहीं है. So it's a shortcoming. No inherit validation. Inherit validation means XML के साथ साथ मैं DTD भी लिख सकता हूँ. Either it can be an external or internal. So simultaneously in a given XML, I can provide the DTD data, DTD validation also. But the same thing is not applicable for the JSON. Inherit validation नहीं होता इसमें. And it's not extensible. JSON is not extensible, but XML का नाम में ही है. It's a completely extensible markup language है. इसके नाम में ही है वो. JSON doesn't provide display capabilities like XML. हमने एक बार स्टडी किया था. XML is not a network protocol, but it can do everything. It can display the thing, it can use it as a database, it can transmit the data, and it can dynamically convert into one format to another format. अगर आपके पास XML है तो dynamically उसको एक PDF में भी generate कर सकते हैं with all the style sheets. आपको लगेगा कि वो पूरा Word document ही है, but it's a basic XML document. So वो जो dynamic capabilities है JSON में नहीं है. It's one more shortcoming. And JSON is less secured than XML. This is one major limitation. That's why when you do the banking applications or any secured kind of application, you generally don't want to send the data from JSON. Banking applications के लिए हम XML ही use करते हैं. It is so much security it can provide. Okay. So JSON के तरह अगर आप लाइट वेट एप्लीकेशन, छोटे मोटे मोबाइल एप्लीकेशन डेवलप करने हैं, एप्लीकेशन सर्विसेज को यूज करना है तो यू कैन फॉल बैक ऑन दिस JSON बिकॉज इट्स इजियर, इट इज लाइटर. बट सेम थिंग कैन नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल फॉर द बैंकिंग और फाइनेंशियल रिलेटेड. लाइक अगर आपको स्टॉक एक्सचेंज के लिए एप्लीकेशन बनाना है, यू डू नॉट टेक JSON. इट इज नॉट रिकमेंडेड बिकॉज JSON इज नॉट एट ऑल सिक्योर्ड. JSON is not at all secured. So in that way, we understood some good things in XML as well as some good things in JSON, some limitations of the JSON, some limitations of the XML. Everything we tried to understand.